to another episode of the Color in Cannabis podcast. We're very excited today to have another great guest, Aiden Rafii of Euphoric Life. Hello, Aiden.
Hey, Taryn.
It's great having you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I've enjoyed your concentrates a bunch of times over at Equity Trade, so it's really cool to have another manufacturer in here. We do manufacturing with Oakland Extracts, but I love what we're doing it with Euphoric Life. You actually are doing it all in-house, something we're not doing. And so I think you have like a very interesting story around that. But tell us a little bit about more about Euphoric Life. What do you do and how long you've been doing it?
Yeah, Euphoric Life, we're type 7 manufacturing, which means that, we can process with volatile extraction methods, so like hydrocarbon extraction. So we do a lot of hydrocarbon extraction. We do a lot of solventless extraction, and then also a lot of infused products through our pre-roll lines. But primarily we're focused on white labeling for other brands and specifically dispensaries also.
Excellent. So do you find that you're making more live resin than live rosin, or a kind of equal amount of all of it, or what are you kind of focused on?
Yeah, as of late, I feel like I'd like to have been doing equal amounts, right? But as of late, I feel like the market just shifting more towards solventless. We've been doing a lot more solventless. And then also just because of some of our infusion methods, we've been getting asked for like a lot more solventless infused pre-rolls.
Excellent. And so when did you start Euphoric Life?
Yeah, so we got our license back in 2016. And then it was about like 4 years of red tape and permitting. And by the time we were up and running, it was probably like April 2020 when we started our first production run.
Yeah, that's got to be like the roughest year ever to start anything with this. That was right when Prop 64 started, right?
Yeah, basically.
So you just opened up when they were trying to figure out the regs, and compliance was a nightmare for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being in a small city, in San Benito County too, they weren't really sure what they were looking for. So getting the volatile extraction license is a little bit tougher just because there's a lot of regs around, like even like our light switches needing to be explosion proof and so forth. So it definitely took a long time.
Yeah, I think people who want to come into the space don't recognize like the level of compliance headache, particularly around manufacturing, because you are dealing with volatile solvents and having a C1, D1 room and just all the heavy expenditure that you have to do to make sure the place is just basically bomb-proof kind of a thing. And that's just such a headache, and it's expensive, and you have to put out all that money before you sell one day of product.
Yeah, exactly. It took, like I said, 4 years, and then it took pretty much my whole family's and I's like life savings.
Yeah.
Because again, like a light switch, might normally cost like $2-3, but when it's explosion proof, it'll cost $40.
Yeah. And that's the cheapest thing you have
exactly.
on the wall. So let's just kind of like wind it back. Tell us about how you actually got into the industry, or before that, like where are you from? Tell us about your life leading up to the industry, and then we'll get into the industry itself.
Yeah. So my background is I'm Iranian. Both my parents came from Iran, and then my dad fled to Germany post-revolution. He lived in a couple camps in Germany for about 2 years, and then he came to the United States. He met my mom in Iran, and they came back here in the 90s. And then,
can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, of course.
Totally off subject. When you say he moved to a camp in Germany, was it like an internment camp like we had for the Japanese during the war, or is it like what kind of camp was it?
Yeah, it was a refugee camp.
Okay.
Specifically for a lot of people who had to flee. So my uncle was a scientist in the military at the time of the revolution, and after the Islamic Revolution, they began executing pretty much anybody who was associated with their like science program in the military. So he had to flee to Germany, and thankfully he was able to actually get asylum for my dad as well.
That's beautiful. Now, were the camps like a friendly place? I know refugee camps can mean wildly different things based on where in the world you are, but I've heard a lot more positive things about how Europeans kind of handle things. Was it was it a comfortable place for him to be, or did he feel like, what the fuck am I doing trapped in this little space?
Yeah, no, it was a comfortable place for him. Like, as far as like he said that living in Germany was a good time. Like, I mean, he had all his needs met. It was definitely better than having to be on the run from the government.
Yeah.
So he was grateful for his time in Germany. And eventually, too, my uncle was able to work in the United States and, again, like helped my dad make it to the States as well.
Excellent. So did your parents meet in the States, or did they meet in Germany, or how did your parents
They
meet?
met in Iran, actually.
Okay.
So
they came over together?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, after my dad had moved to the United States, he'd gone back to see family a few times where he met my mom, and from there, my mom decided to move to the United States as well.
Excellent. And so, what year were you born? I assume they had you here. So
Yeah.
Okay.
So 96.
Okay. And so, where were you guys living?
We were living in San Jose.
Okay. How was that?
Good. I mean, can't complain. Like, it's the Bay Area, so beautiful place. And yeah, my upbringing was Pretty standard, like nothing crazy, I would say. My dad had always been in the cannabis space, so it was always around. And my parents had a pretty stable childhood, which was thankful and grateful for.
Excellent. Is there an Iranian community
Not really, I would say.
Would it be an Iranian community or a Persian community? What would be the proper term for that?
Either or, to be honest. I think a lot of people like to say that they're Persian in order to avoid any sort of, I guess, any sort of, the word for it is, can't know off the top of my head, but sorry, I'm blanking.
I can imagine, because I feel like calling yourself Persian is connecting yourself to historically who the people always were, or maybe if you say you're Iranian, maybe it's like a political thing or a nationalistic kind of an attitude.
Yeah,
that people
you don't want to necessarily be associated with the Islamic Republic, so you'd say you're Persian versus Iranian.
And so did you grow up in a Persian community, or is it just like your immediate family?
Just my immediate family. So none of my actual family had been able to come to the States other than my dad and my uncle until about 2014. So I have one aunt here now as well, but it was pretty much just my parents and I. My mom had me like fairly young. She was about 20 at the time. So it was pretty small family, not a lot of community, I guess, around us. And growing up as like the only child too, like I didn't have siblings or really any other family outside of my parents.
Okay. So did your parents do a lot to make sure you were still connected to your Persian culture, or they just kind of grew up and just...
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a dual citizen actually, and we'd go back to Iran every year.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
But I haven't been able to go back in, I would say, about now 12 years, mostly just because I would actually be drafted into the military there.
Yeah,
so.
I can see that being a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially right now. Especially
100%.
today.
So I don't really want to get drafted to someone we might consider an enemy nation right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is unfortunate because, the rest of my family still lives there.
Yeah,
so I haven't been able to see them. But I was hoping to see them actually later this year in Turkey, where I'm going for a wedding. And my family was supposed to come, but due to the situation right now in the Middle East, their space is closed, so I still might not be able to see them.
Yeah, that's really scary. Just what's going on right now in the world versus like that's where your family is.
Yeah.
You said your dad had always been involved in cannabis. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my parents come from like really different backgrounds. So my dad comes from a very small province in Iran called Fesa, and he actually was the one male in his family of like I believe 6 that, he was not, Iran has a pretty big problem with opium addiction. So my dad actually was the one to sort of break that cycle. And he ended up just being really into alternative medicine, like due to the history his family has with that addiction. And he became a practicing chiropractor just because he, again, really believes in alternative medicine. And throughout that time, he began also experimenting and developing like a love with cannabis.
Interesting.
And so in 2007, he began attending Oaksterdam University with one of his best friends and my godfather. And, after they graduated from Oaksterdam, my dad, he's always been he's always been a four-corner hustler. Like anything that he's been trying to do, like that he's really passionate about, he's been trying to like get in the space and really see how to immerse himself in that industry. So after he went to Oaksterdam, he really developed like a further and greater love for the plant. And he was thinking, how can I get into this industry? And so he decided to start by making some grow lights and really trying to get into the LED space before the LED space was popularized. In around 2010, he began working with Oaksterdam to develop LED lights. And, it was great. Like he invested everything that he'd saved up into it. He developed partnerships with it. But in 2012, a DEA raid happened at Oaksterdam and they seized everything. My dad thought he was a little bit slick by making the patent for tomato plants, but the DEA still seized the lights. Granted that they were at the cannabis university. So, going back to that, like he basically lost all that he invested into it. And he had always been looking for a way to get back into the cannabis industry ever since. And so for like the next few years back at his chiropractic clinic, he began slowly saving up to see how to get back into the industry. And fast forward to 2015, and then we had Prop 215 passed. He found that, 64 passed. He found that, hey, this is like the perfect opportunity for me to get back into the industry and try to get a license to actually build out a cannabis business.
Okay. And so he immediately went into helping you. Like, was he Did he understand about manufacturing, or how did you guys decide, or how did you decide on manufacturing? How did you decide what angle in the industry you wanted to go in?
Yeah, so at the time, we didn't really know what angle we wanted to go to. I had just graduated college and finished a couple years working over in Arizona. And then he had called me up, said that we had just gotten a license or were applying for a license, and, was asking my opinion for it, asked me to help lobby too with the city of Hollister. And when it came down to it, we just saw that, manufacturing gave us a much, I guess, more flexible way of really developing as many different products as we wanted to. At the time, I was working on different emulsion tech as well on the side, and my dad was working on a nano pain patch, essentially, to be able to distribute THC and CBD to the bloodstream straight from a transdermal.
Yep.
And so we saw that, hey, if we're able to get a manufacturing license, we can actually try to go into that space and try to utilize, the different flexibilities that manufacturing gives us.
Absolutely.
And then also he, just being back from his grow light business, had seen like how sort of tough it is to really run a cultivation due to, like, if one harvest goes down, like, you pretty much lose everything right away. And
cultivation is very treacherous.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, whether it's dealing with different microbials, pesticides, or different aphids, for instance, that'll come in and eat all your plants. There's so many different factors and variables in there that could really just shoot you down if you're a cultivation. So we didn't really want to take the risk. We felt like manufacturing was a little bit less risky, but we really had no idea what to expect in the industry.
Yeah, manufacturing, there's some ways it's less risky in that you have such self-stable product. Like, once you make it, it's good. You don't have to worry about it went bad all of a sudden. And you can, and also getting inputs from many different sources. You're not kind of like dependent on the health of one particular farm. So it does kind of spread out that risk. But again, like you're saying, with the cost of all of the compliance issues around making the place safe, because you're using like volatile solvents, that's a really, really big headache. So what of the products that you make are you kind of most excited about? Do you have things that you enjoy making you're more excited about than others, or you just like the fact that you can make a lot of different types of products?
Yeah, I would say right now, like, my favorite thing to do in the lab is currently the techniques that we're using to powderize, I would say, like, rosin and other sort of extracts. It's just amazing to see that, the cannabis oil and extracts in general really do act like different, I guess I would say, like, different oils and extracts can be manipulated in any sort of way that you can dream of or think of. So, like, a lot of what I do is I like looking at different old patents on how, say, like, crude oil is cleaned up, or how milk has been powderized in the past, and try to apply those same techniques to oils. So I'd say, like, right now, the manipulation of oil to get it into different forms for different consumers has probably been, like, my favorite thing to do lately.
That's awesome. That seems really exciting. I take for granted how much, because we're kind of in manufacturing, you're kind of constantly trying to press or push science forward. But a lot of our best products, like rosin, came after live resin, and it's an older method, and an older methodology yielding us a better product. So I love the idea that manufacturing, as much as we're moving forward, people are still kind of looking backwards at other techniques. That's really cool that you're looking at the things that you're looking at.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely. Like, my favorite days at work are just days where I can, avoid having to deal with a lot of, like, the red tape or taxes or anything like that, and I can just go work in the lab.
That's beautiful. So, so is your dad still working with you at the lab?
No, he's not. So just due to, like, the financial situation in cannabis, right? You do need, like, a sort of side income to help out and make sure that, hey, if we do have, like, a bad drop or something goes wrong somewhere, that we can still survive. And so my dad has been, for the last, I would say, like, 5-ish years, been primarily focused on just his clinic right now.
All right, excellent. Good foundation for what you're building then.
Exactly.
How did your mom feel about cannabis? Was she always cool with it as well?
Yeah, so I mean, my mom, ever since, my dad has been smoking weed ever since, like, they were together and married. So for her, it has just been part of, their marriage. She actually doesn't smoke herself. She might occasionally, but she doesn't mind it. And it's something she's just, like, says comes with the territory of like marrying my dad. And I do know that she does give my dad a hard time about me being in the industry now too, but
Got her baby out there smoking weed.
exactly. But she's okay with it.
No, that's beautiful. So I imagine your extended family is kind of comfortable with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like, I know my dad doesn't have too much contact with his side of the family, just, for the reasons I specified before. But my mom's side of the family has also just known my dad for the last 30 years. So they're also like, yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day.
That sounds really beautiful. I know so many different people come from different cultures where their assumptions of their culture kind of like create pressure for them being in this space, being in this business. It's awesome that you didn't have to deal with it as much. There's the train. So just to remind us that we're in Oakland. I know as we spoke with Isaac last time, we've been talking to a lot of folks recently about the amount of headaches they've been going through with the DCC, the Department of Cannabis Control in California. And they've been creating, in their attempts to create a fair and safe market, have created a lot of roadblocks, particularly for small businesses that have made it very, very difficult, not just to succeed, but just to stay open. You want to tell us a little bit about your experiences with the DCC?
Yeah, definitely. I think at first, when we had first started the facility, when we were first producing, the DCC was really easy to work with, actually, on the manufacturing side. We used to have 2 scientists specifically come down and, they would inspect our SOPs, see if we were doing everything compliantly and just making sure that the consumer was protected. But I think as of late, especially just with the, new information surrounding just those articles about like how a lot of California cannabis has pesticides and whatnot, the DCC has been kind of going the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
And they've been really coming down hard on a lot of different businesses. And granted, I'm all for making sure that product that gets to the consumer is compliant and it's clean. But I think there's a way to go about it that doesn't involve just complete enforcement. Yeah. And so for me, our latest experiences with the DCC have been a little bit, I would call like over the top. I think we all know that the main market in California is the traditional market right now, and the legal market does dwarf that. And so the DCC is really focused on trying to root out the traditional market right now. But in doing so, I think what they're doing is sort of a policy of guilty until proven innocent, which, I mean, as we all know, is against like the Constitution in and of itself. And
it's the opposite of what this country is supposed to be.
Exactly. And so my latest experiences have been them coming in rather than wanting to collaborate, but really looking to enforce and set ground rules of, hey, we're the boss here. You all need to listen to us. And if we don't like something, we're going to then embargo it, even if it's not necessarily against the rules. And so what that means is when they conduct an embargo, they will seize the product, essentially. They will not allow you to touch it or use it, and then have you go through a lengthy process in order to undo that embargo. And a lot of times they can just do it on the spot, where if in our Constitution, specifically the Fifth Amendment, it says that, hey, the government is not allowed to seize property without due process.
Yes.
And so what they're currently doing is depriving licensees of due process in order to come in and really show that enforcement is here and it's here to stay.
That's a real shame. It's interesting how much recently the DCC has been behaving like ICE.
Yeah.
Like originally the conversations we're having around immigration was that they were just going to go after criminals. They weren't going to go after just everyone who migrated to this country. But since they can't just get the criminals in the numbers they want, they're just going after everyone who immigrated to this country. So the DCC, they originally said with enforcement, they were going to focus on the traditional market or the black market, people selling cannabis illegally, and kind of crack down on that to help support the legal business. But since that's difficult to do, they're just jumping on the back of all the legal businesses, putting all these fines against them, embargoing product, putting them out of business under the guise of making everything safer, and they're not really focusing on the groups that they said they were going to. So it's sad to see the DCC and the ICE are having that kind of similarity right now, especially in California.
Yeah, that's actually a great parallel and something that I've been thinking of, just seeing the videos of, how just because someone might be brown or looks like they're from a different country, ICE might take them away and then demand that they show paperwork after they've done so. And that's been a similar thing with the DCC, where they will seize the product and then demand that you go through a lengthy process after to show that it's not black market product, traditional market product.
And the insane thing is I could still tell you tonight where you can go to a traditional market and get everything that you want. And they know where those places are too, but still they're choosing to focus on people who are trying to do it right, people who you chose to pay taxes. You chose to enter into a system where you were going to lose money because you wanted to follow the law, and they're now punishing you because you could have done an illegal lab and been stacking money all this time, and they would never know, because we all know a bunch of labs that are off-the-book labs that are making it work. So it's really unfortunate that they're choosing to go after people who try to play by the rules.
Yeah, what I've always said too, the legal business essentially gets no benefits of a real legal business. You know, we don't get small business loans, we don't get access to traditional banking, but yet we still get punished like in illegal business, you know, where we get no write-offs. We have a lot of enforcement. And the thing is, because of that too, because we're a legal business, everybody knows our addresses, everybody knows where we're operating, everybody has access to all of our records, which makes enforcement easier and punishing us a lot easier.
And it makes it easier for the robbers.
Exactly.
You know, puts a target on all of our backs in the guise of keeping everything safe, and they're not keeping anything safe.
Yeah, and I mean, we were robbed, I would say, I think it was in 2023. Yeah, we were robbed August 2023, and it goes to show, like, if you're running a legal cannabis business, you have to sort of go against, you know, the state trying to enforce and really ding you for whatever they can. You have to go against your local municipality also being able to tax you and set rules. And then you also have to go against criminals who now know where you're located and also know that, hey, this is an all cash business, or they have a bunch of product at this facility that, hey, they're an easy target to rob. I do know too, like I was talking to one police officer at a different county, and he had come in just to check out our facility because he was implementing a cannabis program in his county. And he's made a joke, but I mean, what he said was, hey, at the end of the day, you all are still drug dealers to us. And hearing that come from a police officer, you know, someone who's supposed to supposedly protect and serve, right? It was kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, no, it's really scary, especially in smaller markets, not smaller markets, but smaller cities where the police are a little bit more traditional or they're a little bit older. They really come with a lot of baggage. I was at a facility recently, actually in Oakland, and it was shocking how like sympathetic the cops were with the business owner, because they've been robbed, and the cops like, hey, we've been here twice in the past 2 months, but these are some of the things we can do to kind of help make you safer. And they just had a very kind of positive energy trying to make it better, where I've talked to people in other municipalities where the cops show up and they're just like, whatever, you guys deserve it, whatever happens to you, who kind of cares. And it's really scary to see the different attitudes that different law enforcement departments have, and especially considering this is a legal business. We pay a lot of taxes, our taxes pay their salaries, so it's sad that they don't have more, and that all the police involved don't realize that they should be protecting an industry that's paying for their industry.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're thankful that in Hollister, despite it's a small municipality, our local police department has been fairly receptive and wants to protect us. I mean, granted, there's only 4 cannabis businesses left in Hollister. And I mean, a lot of that is due to just the way the taxes do stack from the local municipality to all the way to the state level. But they've been relatively easy and friendly to work with, and I can't really complain about just the treatment that we have received from.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I love hearing that when people can actually work well with the cities that they're in, because it's like, it's not that hard for the city to have a slightly different attitude and want to protect these businesses. Because again, once all these businesses or licenses are out of Hollister, that's less money for the city. You know, so it's really important to maintain these relationships.
And I think it's something they've noticed, because they did start with 16 licenses, and I mean, now they're down to 4.
They had to feel that.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that does have to do with just like the way the state is sort of essentially choking out the businesses.
Yeah, it's a shame. So what kind of advice would you give for someone who's trying to get into the legal cannabis business right now, either as a manufacturer or just on any kind of license type?
Yeah, I would say don't go in with the expectation of making money.
I think that's the most common theme throughout every episode that we've had so far. It's still true.
Yeah, and I mean, because I've talked to so many people, right? And I actually talked to a family friend 3 months ago around, where he said, hey, I have this awesome opportunity to buy this cultivation and go in and I could just grow a lot, make a lot of money. And I was like, okay, have you run the numbers yet? And he said, no, I haven't. I just know, I can sell a lot of weed. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, look, you need to do a deep dive on all the numbers. Do you know the local tax? And he said, no. And I said, well, that's the first place you got to start. So that's the one thing I would say is you really need to know your numbers and your financials, because the more I keep running numbers, right, when you have somebody like Green Thumb Industries, for instance. They're one of the only MSOs to really report a profit in their quarterly earnings. And the profit that they report is 4%, right?
Yeah.
Which means that, hey, if I put $100 today in treasury bonds and just sat on that, I would make more money than running a cannabis business.
It's sad to say, it's sadly true.
Yeah.
You could do anything and make more money than you can. You can have a peanut stand and make more money than in cannabis.
Exactly. So like that's the first thing I would say. And two, it's like if you are in it for the money, do something else.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what do you guys have in the future? You guys have different ventures? You're going to keep kind of going down the same road? Do you have new projects you're kind of working on?
Yeah, right now it's pretty much hyper focused on just making sure that we can get through like the market downturn right now that it is in Euphoric. So at Euphoric right now specifically, we're really just putting our heads down, finding good farm partners, finding good white label partners, and honestly just trying to cater to their needs versus us trying to rock the boat and put something new out. A structure that I've found to really enjoy is specifically the brand white label partners, where they come to us and they say like, hey, we have these products, we really want you to make those, and we sort of go to their exact specs. But a lot of times what I'm seeing too is the stuff that I'm doing on the side in the lab, I can still bring to them, and if they are interested in putting those out, they'll be the ones to launch it.
Yeah.
And that's been really nice because from a standpoint of, I think in cannabis right now, especially as a small operator, you need partnership to survive.
Absolutely.
So I'm primarily focused on just making sure that we have partners that are easy to work with, trustworthy, and frankly, like as transparent as I am, because I'm extremely transparent with our processes, our financials, and just the way that we do things at Euphoric Life. And I look for partners that operate the same way.
That's awesome. I think really for those who are trying to get in the business who don't have a lot of resources but have a good idea about either the market they want to work within or products they want to develop, finding a good manufacturer to partner with is an amazing opportunity. The cost of getting your own license is just insane. The build out, just trying to do everything compliantly, will put most people out of business. But to find someone who's smart enough to, like you guys, were able to do it on your own and to be able to partner with you to create products seems like a great entryway for people who are trying to get into the cannabis business and aren't sitting on a large war chest to kind of open their own doors kind of a thing. So I think what you're doing is it creates an awesome platform for so many other people who are trying to get into this space. I think one of the great things about manufacturing is that it makes it so easy to collaborate with so many different people. That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the one thing too that we're starting to do really well is I've been taking a little bit more of, I guess, a hands-on approach with helping brands really understand their financials too. So for me, I think that's been really important, is just showing them that, hey, if you extract this much with us, you'll get this amount of yield. You can make this amount per gram. This is what you should price it at, just to make sure that these brands don't sort of fall into a trap of either underpricing their own product or not necessarily recognizing the revenue or the profit that a drop might bring and what goes into that, whether that's like having to run promos at a store, discounts, things of that nature. I think that's really important for brands to know that up front prior to getting into anything.
Yeah, that what you're doing is invaluable in regards to that. I know with Oak and Extracts, we're constantly juggling, like raise, lower the prices, play with the prices. And usually I'm not doing it based on the numbers from other people. I'm looking at the market, I'm talking to buyers, I'm kind of guesstimating it, but I don't really do a deep analysis of my numbers. I know a couple times I have done that with folks who, I have a partner, Chelsea, she's amazing with numbers. We'll really do a deep dive on the numbers and like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was losing so much, or I didn't realize how much more I could have been making if I just made just a 50-cent increase can really make a big difference in revenue over time. And so really being on top of your numbers and having someone, and if you're not great with numbers, like I'm not great with numbers, having someone who is really strong with that is great. So it's amazing that you do that. Not only provide people the actual product, but help them make smart decisions about how they launch into the market. So that's really awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's been showing its strength when we work with our different farm partners.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, right, like they want to just sell their trim for, let's say, like $20 a pound or something close to that. And then we'll run through it with them and say like, hey, look, if we extract it, we can get this much out of it. We can turn it into like 6 different SKUs, 7 different SKUs, whatever you want to do with it. And I think it's helping a lot of our farm partners, like our main partner, Norse Organics right now. They've been invaluable to us, and I think vice versa, we've been invaluable to them as well. Just making sure that, hey, this harvest, if you have X amount of pounds, this is where everything's going to go.
Yeah.
This is what we'll get for it, and so forth. So I think it's really been helping the farms that we work with stay alive and us too.
Yeah, that transparency is critical, especially with manufacturers, because you're taking so much product from farms. And like we've fallen into this trap. When I've talked to anybody else, you think you're going to get a certain amount from the farm. You tell them an estimate. Oh, we should get X amount of a yield, so we should be able to return this amount of money from you because you're looking at the product. You get it back home and you run it, and it gives you a fraction of the yields you're expecting, or more than you're expecting, and your numbers are completely thrown off. So, and the farmers, they get really upset if you tell them you're going to get a certain amount back and you get something far less than that, and they don't understand why. They just think you're pocketing the money. So, being able to be transparent, saying this is what we got when we ran your product, this is what we can do with it, and just keeping them involved every step of the way would be huge. And that's something that we did not do. And there's a couple farmers who don't love us for that for things 5 years ago. So that's super critical that people do that. So I really respect that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's exactly why I do it now, because I mean, I had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
Right. Like I remember like one of our first big extraction runs for a partner ended up yielding about like, I think it was 4% less than what I thought it was going to yield. And then all of a sudden now we're in a hole where, the farm is expecting some sort of payment that you can't provide because the product's not there. Yeah. Right. And so I learned it the hard way that, hey, it's on us as manufacturers, as extractors to really communicate the expectations a little bit better. Yeah. Because how can I expect a farm to know what their yields are supposed to be if they've never ran extracts before? Yeah.
It's also, I think, super critical with farmers because I feel like, at least in my experience, by the time the farmer turns to a manufacturer, they're kind of desperate. It's like they didn't get the sales they're expecting to get. Someone didn't pay for something. They're in a pinch. They're like, okay, this isn't working the normal method. Let's extract something so that we can kind of cover our bills. And then you come back with far less than you're expecting. This just like screwed one direction, then the next direction. I've seen a lot of farmers just get turned around and around and around with that. And it's hurtful for them. So giving them that transparency from the beginning is awesome.
Thanks.
I think I've said awesome like 12 times, but I think it's very important to be transparent with people in that way. So it's good business practice.
Like I said, I had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah. We all do. So you were mentioning earlier that you're actually back in school. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, right now I'm doing part-time MBA right now, in-person, night school. It's definitely been a lot having to juggle that with the cannabis business, but
especially at Berkeley too. So I know their MBA program's no joke over there.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun though. I will say, like, I think just my whole professional life has been in cannabis, and frankly, like, I don't know if that can continue to be a possibility just because of the way the market is and the red tape and tax and everything that I really need to figure out, hey, what else is out there for me potentially? Granted, if I could stay in cannabis the rest of my business career, I would love to. But yeah, I have been going to school part-time right now, night classes on campus in person. And it's really helped put things into perspective for me. Like, I know that school typically isn't supposed to make you less stressed, but it definitely has been because, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, okay, our small cannabis operation is just like a speck on like the dot of like what really is out there when it comes to other industries. And it's also taught me a lot, and it's really helped me with being able to say like run our company a little bit more efficiently. So the knowledge I'm also gaining from this, like even though the cannabis industry is sort of the school of hard knocks and you get so many lessons from it, so to speak, like the formal education necessarily wasn't there for me to really implement some of the stuff that we're doing now at Euphoric Life. So it's been a blessing, I would say, like to be able to still go to school and come to work every day also. Yeah.
That's really cool. Often so many of us in cannabis are very much like we're from the school of hard knocks and we don't need like extra degrees to do what we do. But I've found that the few times I've sat down with people with MBAs who are in the cannabis industry, their ability to kind of see through the nonsense of my paperwork and kind of give me good advice about what to do. And they can be very dispassionate about it because it's just a widget to them. It's just you're selling this thing and do the numbers add up. And if they don't, like, it's not about how you feel and how much you want to do this. If the numbers don't add up, they don't add up. So having someone with that kind of practical experience has really helped me a lot just in terms of talking to them in passing. So the idea of running your business through that kind of knowledge seems like it'd be very powerful.
Yeah, I would say too, it's like, in this industry, right, this industry to me is harder than any other industry just because of, again, I've said it a few times, red tape, taxes, enforcement. And because of all those variables, right, you gain so many valuable lessons on having to run a business efficiently that when I'm in class, right, like 85% of what we go over in class, like I've already had to learn. Yeah. But that extra 15% that really, what I would say, puts a framework for so much of the knowledge that I've gained in the cannabis industry has helped me immensely. And it's like, to your point, some of the times where I want to wash a strain that might yield 0.5% that smells really good and tastes really good, but then, I have to look at it logically and objectively, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I think those of us who are from cannabis, we're so passionate about the plant that we want to make this thing. But like when you run a business, you have employees. Like it's cool to be passionate about this thing, and I've seen it because I've worked with some other much larger companies, and I hang out with the ownership, and we hang out and we smoke, and I'm like, why don't we do this, that, and the third? And they're like, Taryn, I have 45 employees. Like I have to take care of them, and I want to do all these fun extra ventures, but if it doesn't pencil out, and there's always the accountant or the CFO, there's always an Eric who's sitting out there double checking your numbers, and if it doesn't pencil out, it's going to put you out of business. So being able to again step back, be dispassionate about it, and like what makes the most sense in the current market is really important.
Yeah, and I think to that point, right, like one of my favorite cuts in the world is the North Organics Purple Medusa cut. That they've grown that for 30 years, right? And typically back when we weren't necessarily washing, we were doing, I think it was like out of the 600 plants that we were growing, 500 of those would be Purple Medusa every single year. And just because it was amazing, we would be able to like blend it with different live resin and really create really cool flavor profiles from it. But it's just the numbers just don't allow for us to do that, right? So we've like had to cut that number down. But at the same time, because we've been able to get those numbers in hand and really figure out our yields and what we do, we still do it like maybe like 50 plants a year for our personal. But the thing is that outside of that, right, the growers are a little bit happier still just because they know that, hey, what I grow will actually sell, will actually yield. So it is sort of that balance of, what we like to smoke and what we currently dab on isn't necessarily what the consumer likes or wants to dab on or what makes financial sense, especially with everything being like a spray pack nowadays or artificial flavoring in vapes. It's just a whole different market than what we're used to.
Yeah, I have a running joke with one of my friends where we blame rosin for everything. Because rosin, I mean, this is way inside baseball for people who aren't this into manufacturing. Obviously, we love rosin more than live resin. But rosin produces so much less than live resin, you have to be very, very careful about what strains you can and cannot use. Whereas live resin is butane. It's going to work. You're going to get a good amount out of it. So you can kind of blast anything through a solvent method, through God, how to explain this to people to understand. So if you use butane or different solvents like that, you get a substantially higher yield when you make an extraction. Extraction is a concentrate, so you're getting a small percentage of what you put in. So if you put in a pound of flour and you're only getting 10% back out, you're only going to get 40 grams back out. And so traditional live resin through like butane or CO2 or butane or propane, you get more like a 20% return, whereas rosin, you'll often get a 3 to 5% return. And so now since rosin is so popular, most of the high-end products are rosin, so you can't really sell high-end live resin anymore because everyone wants rosin, but there were plants that only produced through live resin. And if you could get amazing fresh frozen, you could make just the most amazing live resin, but because the market won't support expensive live resin anymore, you can't afford the starting materials. So rosin has kind of forced live resin to always be cheaper, and we've lost that super high-quality live resin, but then we lost the ability to extract from some of the better strains because they don't produce it for rosin. So it's kind of, I did not explain that very well, but we blame rosin for the absence of some good resin out there in the market. Wow, I'm gonna have to edit all of that out, but I love it all. But it is an interesting change in the marketplace, how rosin has taken over and completely changed. Like everything's papaya now. There's so few strains that produce for rosin. So much of the rosin is all the same. Again, I'm gonna have to edit all this out because it's way inside baseball. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. We got to get together and smoke some of this stuff. I'm a big fan of rosin over resin, but as we were just discussing, I know because of the yield issue, sometimes live resin gives you more opportunities for what plants you can kind of extract. Tell me about your feelings about rosin versus resin.
Yeah, so I think they're two great products. There's something for everybody, but what I will say is like right now we're facing sort of an issue, right, where there's been a lot of demand for rosin, but not all strains can really produce that much rosin, and a lot of that is due just to like the way the trichomes are shaped on flowers and the structure of plants, where solventless extraction, right, you use ice water to essentially knock off trichomes to then extract and use as rosin, right? But with that, you're going to see that some strains, they just won't extract into rosin very well. So like that Purple Medusa that we were talking about, when I'm running it as fresh frozen and I'm running it with the hydrocarbon extraction, which in a sense, you dump solvent over it, everything dissolves through the solvent. You then get the solvent back, it's called a slurry, and you essentially then can make live resin out of that slurry. So that produces a lot more yield, right? So on the Purple Medusa, for instance, if I'm doing a solvent extraction, I'll get back like maybe 5 or 6%. Whereas on the rosin extraction, I'll get 0.5%. So it makes it not viable for us to use that much of it anymore, just because we need to be growing for rosin right now, because rosin is what the consumer wants. Yeah. So a lot of these strains aren't able to be used just because they won't yield for solventless.
That's a much better explanation. Thank you. Yeah, it's a shame. There's strains that I love. I'm a huge Durban Poison fan. I love the flowers, one of my favorite flowers, but it doesn't really press much. So I have to get live resin because you get a higher percentage of extract from it, but I still miss the quality that you get from rosin with that. You're also mentioning, I'd love to hear more about what you've learned in school in your MBA program and how it's impacted your day-to-day business.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've learned is really that I shouldn't be comparing base profitability. Like I shouldn't be taking that as a number. So the way to break that down for me is I should be comparing it to the opportunity cost of something else, right? So earlier I talked about how rather than starting a cannabis business, if you just put $100 into treasury bonds and made 4% on it, you would have made more money than had you built a cannabis business and had a 3% profit. Right. So a lot of times when I'm deciding on what to drop or, if I want to make a new SKU, I would just look at like the base profitability, like, oh, okay, X plus Y. Like if I get this hardware and I fill it with extract and I sell it at this price, this is how much my business can make on it. This is how much we can afford to pay the employees on it. But that's apparently like not the best way to be considering how profitable something is. I should be comparing it with like the opportunity cost of putting it, say, in the stock market or in the treasury market for a guaranteed return. So that's something that has really helped shape the different directions that we go in as a business. So prior to that, we used to be doing a lot of branded products ourselves, but seeing that after the different distro fees, the different taxes, excise taxes, just because something's profitable doesn't make it viable and doesn't make it like long-term viable for your business. So I think that was probably the most important lesson that I've learned so far, is just making sure to compare it to other methods of investing in order to see if, hey, is this a direction our business wants to go in?
Yeah, no, that's really smart. That's something I've never thought of. I'm constantly just like, does this make sense here? Like, can I afford to do this? Can I afford to hire him? Can I afford to add this product line? But never really looking at like what my money would do in a different space and comparing it to the space that I'm putting it. And is this a wise investment long-term compared to other things? So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's been super helpful too because, I'm not sure if the listeners know, but cannabis debt money, right? Like if we wanted to go get money from a bank, we can't do that, right? So when we want to get a loan, for instance, like my friends are always so surprised when they hear that a loan that I want to get is at 19% interest, right? So when they hear a number like that, and then I'm plugging that into that same formula where I calculate like the net present value of something, I see that 90% of the time, cannabis debt is something that just digs you into a deeper hole.
Yeah.
And so many of us right now in this industry have taken on personal loans, have taken on personal debt at astronomical amounts just to keep our hopes and dreams alive. Mm-hmm. But we now see that all it's doing is really digging us deeper into the hole.
Yes, I've experienced that myself.
Same.
Where you're so deep in the hole that every dollar you make is just climbing out of it. It's not building anything new. It's not going into your pocket. It's just trying to climb you out of that hole that the market kind of puts you in.
Yeah, and so for us too, it's like I've tried to make it my goal that, we don't take on any more debt as a company, even though it's nearly impossible. Yeah. Just because when you can't have any tax write-offs and you are getting taxed at local, state level, and like even for instance, like at our city, right, like they charge us an extra $90 per dump run to dump old biomass once they found out we were a cannabis business. So everything is taxed in one way or the other.
They're going to get their money.
Exactly.
Get it. And his money and his money and his money. I guess in that sense, because Like you're saying that once you did the analysis, you realize it makes more sense to white label. It makes more sense to produce for other brands just to keep it in your own brand. What were some of the other lessons that you learned that you would have started the business differently? Like, oh, now that I know this, we should have started it like this as opposed to.
Yeah, I think for us is just like I think eventually, right, when you look at every other industry in the world, everybody's really specialized. So I think that for us, one of our main things that we did was I think we spread ourselves too thin, right? At first, we were extracting distillate, we were extracting butane, we were extracting solventless, we were also doing pre-rolls. Granted, we're still doing all four of those things today, but I do wish that we had started with more of a focused approach.
Yes.
And, you know, where we invested, say, tranches of money in 4 different areas, if we had just put that towards, let's say, like getting one butane system that ran, say, close to 500 pounds a day versus what we currently do, I think we would have been a little bit better off had we specialized in our initial investment of capital versus having to spread everything else out across like 4 different spaces. Yeah. So I would say, like, really, if someone did want to come into the industry, really focus on a niche and figure out what that is before you do anything else.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I know so many of us are kind of freewheeling, just trying to figure out what works and trying all these different things. And you do spread yourself too thin. You wind up spending a lot of money on R&D, working with all these different farms, and then you're trying to sell all this product. And you don't have a lot of any of it. And it does make sense. You just got to get focused, get really good at one thing, get known for that thing, and then kind of branch out as makes sense after that.
Yeah, and for us, it has been a little bit tough to sort of go in that focus just because we've already spread ourselves pretty deep. So for me, I'm really just trying to figure out, hey, how do we put our resources in specific places without necessarily cutting what we already have, right? Because I think my main concern is just the people that work at Euphoric, and what we've always tried to do is have them in different spots just so they have all different skills when we do try to sort of narrow ourselves and specialize. But it still is a balancing act of really figuring out what to do when we have so much different equipment already in the building.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but it makes sense. Earlier we were talking about the way enforcement is going down with the DCC is way too draconian. They're just kind of putting their boots in everyone's necks all of a sudden. But we have a unique situation in the sense that the DCC at least says they want to know what they're doing and the impact on small businesses. And so we've had a lot of folks within the Equity Trade Network kind of like sharing their experiences with the DCC to kind of let the DCC know the impact of their bureaucratic choices on small businesses and on the small market. And again, we're lucky that the DCC even wants to hear from us. In so many other industries, they're just the regs. These are the regs. There's no changing them. So what do you wish the DCC knew how their decisions were impacting you and small businesses? Or better yet, better question is, what does enforcement look like to you? How should they be enforcing the industry right now?
Yeah, I think it's important to come from a place of being human. I think a lot of times the enforcers come in and see us as a job or, you know, people to lay the rules down on. But like, for instance, in our case, when the enforcement team came in, our head of compliance had been out on a serious cancer leave, and she's out until October. And when we tried to explain that to them, they treated it like it was an excuse. One of the employees actually began laughing at us as if it was a joke. And frankly, like, something like that, when someone tells you that, you know, I think you should come from a place of being human and saying, okay, how can I help this business get back into compliance versus, hey, how can we punish them for this? Yeah. So that's what I would really ask the DCC, because at the end of the day, yes, they do have a code of rules that's going to be really difficult to change, and they do need people to stick to those code of rules, which is fine, right? But recognize the position that a lot of these small businesses are in, where most of them are fighting daily to survive, on the brink of, you know, not making payroll or not making rent, and really coming from a place of compassion, help us get to where we need to get to, or where you all need us to get to, rather than trying to punish us for not being there. Yeah. So I'd say, like, that's my biggest concern with this is them just treating us like a spreadsheet and just a license that they need to bring into compliance rather than a helping hand.
Yeah. Treat humans like humans.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's just a really good point. I think what some people in maybe this version of the DCC don't realize is that everyone that they're enforcing chose to come into this market and get taxed. They were in the other market where they're safe, making money, and they chose to make less money to try to do things by the letter of the law. I remember when we first started focusing on taxes with Oakland Extracts, we were happy to pay taxes because we wanted to kind of vote for this is an important legal industry, and the more tax money coming into it, the more it just kind of legitimized all of us. And so I think when they're running around enforcing, when they're putting $5,000 a day fines on people for bad paperwork, that they're putting people out of business who wanted to do this legal and right and pushing them back into the other market, because they're not really doing anything in that market, the market that's giving them no tax revenue, that's putting out dirty product all over the street. So it's like they're not doing anything to force that market, but they're just increasing that market by pushing out all the people who are trying to do it right. It's like they're punishing people who want to follow the law.
Yeah, and I mean, trust me, if I was in the unlicensed market right now, I'd be so much better off. Yeah. And it's like, that's just the frank truth of it. And it's what worst case that happens is, right, I operate unlicensed and then I'll get a fine for it. But in California, but the fact of the matter is I'm getting fined daily, like anyways, with these taxes, with this red tape. And so I think the DCC, to your point, like needs to understand that, hey, we willingly came into this market. We're willing to help you guys build this industry. Yes. And I mean, most of us, we understand that a lot of these rules right now can't be changed and have to be followed, but you can choose how to enforce them.
Yes. Enforcement should not look like armed officers going to the door of a legal business. Yep. Like, I understand the cops are going to be all weaponed up if they're going to go to some illegal grow or what other operation they deem as being illegal. But if someone applied for a license, has employees on staff, like you're paying taxes for them, everyone's wearing their little badges and all that kind of stuff. Like, if we're trying to play by the rules, you shouldn't show up with guns. And I've talked to several people recently where the cops are showing up with guns and shit. And it's like, you're not going to enforce this illegal shit that you just drove by so you can bust somebody with guns who's just trying to just do the legal right thing. And so many people, I know I'm taking points from somebody else who we're going to have in here soon. But his thing was like, they were in that other market and they did have cops run up on their property with guns. And that was a long time ago. And they did everything right to prevent that from happening again. So when the cops now come to them again with guns drawn, it creates this PTSD thing where it brings back all these memories of being scared of the cops dropping down into your farm from above. And so they just have no appreciation that there are human beings behind these experiences, and they are traumatizing people.
Yeah. I mean, my dad said that, hey, the last time the DCC came in, it reminded him exactly of when the DEA raided Oaksterdam. Yeah. Like he said, it was in a similar fashion to that. And when you come in with the intent of enforcing and trying to find something that's not there, what you're going to end up doing is oftentimes you're going to start essentially giving out felonies for something like jaywalking. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And I mean, I've heard horror stories from farms where, you know, for a lot of people who don't know, like oftentimes clones that grow into mature plants that end up flowering, they come from a main like mother plant. Mm-hmm. And this farm had told me their mother plant, the metric tag, everybody needs to keep a tag on their plants, on every single plant. The metric tag on the mother plant had fallen off. And when the DCC couldn't find that, what they did was they tore down whole rooms of this farmer's crop, even though every other plant was tagged, just because it came from that one mother plant, right? To me, that doesn't say anything about like enforcement. That's just deciding to apply enforcement however you want. You're judge, jury, and executioner.
And it's ridiculous because clearly if the person tagged every other plant that came from the mom, if they tagged all the thousands of clones, at one point they probably tagged the mom, you know? And even if you can't find it, it ain't the end of the world. I mean, they're treating it like if you make I've talked to someone else who one of the stickers were all wrong. The decimal point was like kind of in the wrong place on some stickers, and they just needed to re-sticker it. And instead of allowing them to re-sticker it, they wanted to embargo everything. Yep. And it's fresh flour. It's not going to be good after a while. There is a very short shelf life for when it's still good. They lost their entire crop because they're worried about a sticker that could have been fixed on the spot. There's like, I'll print it right now and re-sticker them. They're like, no, you have to go through this lengthy appeal process. And just the DCC creating a process where people cannot get quick resolution for produce that is going bad is going to cripple an industry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're seeing that too with the lawsuits for aspergillus, right? Yeah. Like where it's like if mold happens to products, like it's going to happen to something that sits on a shelf, right? And if it happens to one jar, now you have to recall that whole batch of crop, right? And it's what kind of grocery store would do that, right? If one orange got moldy, all of a sudden they tell that orange producer, hey, take out every single orange that you've have at every single grocery store.
Yeah, to put them out of business, which is they're doing to us right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's interesting again, how difficult they have made it to be legal and compliant in the space. Yet they want us to be doing this in the proper way, and it's created a lot of hurdles. I know I'm still glad to be in the legal market. It still feels good on a certain level, but the headaches they have created are almost insurmountable.
I mean, it feels good because I love this industry,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think we were talking about it before. We're just the people that you meet in this industry is unlike anybody else that you're going to meet in any other industry, right? Like, every other industry has like an archetype of what that person working in that space should be, right? Whether it's the trucking industry or tech industry, you have some sort of stereotypical person that's going to be the majority in that industry.
Yes.
Whereas in cannabis, we're all over the place, right? Like, and it's frankly, like, that's the one thing that right now has been keeping me here is just like I've made like my best and lifelong friends in this industry. And as cliche as it may sound, like, I also just love the product itself as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan. It often amazes me like how enthusiastic I can get about little things.
Yeah.
I was talking to some bud tenders last night at an event about Uncle Arnie's, a beverage. And I was just so excited about this beverage, and they were laughing at how excited I was to talk about this beverage that wasn't my product. I just excited. I love to drink it. And they have this club has a consumption bar where they don't make mixed drinks. They take cannabis drinks and they make mocktails. So the person who was there, she had made this drink with all these, limeade and all these other good, and it was so good, and I was having such a good time talking to the customers at the dab bar that I inadvertently sold a bunch of the product because I was just so happy about it. And it's like, what other industry are you accidentally going to be selling, kind of a thing? Like, you're so enthusiastic about every product there that you just wind up just selling other people's stuff just out of enthusiasm about talking about it. It's like food. Like, chefs love food, so you love everyone's food. You're almost agnostic to it because you love food. I feel like in cannabis, I love all the brands or most of the brands, and like, even if I didn't make it, I have nothing to do with it, I still love talking about it and so passionate about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like the cannabis plant is the most diverse plant in the world and in like the history of our world. So it is just so incredible, like how many different combinations you can make. Like one thing that we're doing right now is like pheno hunting for next season, and it's like all these different crosses that we're putting together. We're just excited because we have no idea what to expect, and we can't wait to see what's to come. And to your point, like the beverage space is something where I'm so excited for that because there's going to be, that's what I think is going to be the sort of bridge to like the regular consumer. And that increases accessibility for everybody too.
I mean, I know it's an expensive area of cannabis to get into because bottling and packaging and storage and transportation is really expensive. But in terms of seeing the consumer react to it, beverages are amazing because you go down quick. The nano emulsions, so they kind of activate quickly, and you're not just sitting there eating a bag of gummies. And so I think the beverage space is definitely going to expand, and we're going to see lots of more cool things in there.
Yeah, and I know for me personally, like I don't really drink alcohol anymore. And now when I see, like, even if it's like a hemp D9 beverage at a bar, I'm stoked because I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I can actually just hang out, chill, still be involved in everything that's going on at the bar, but also, partake myself.
That is the one thing that's still sad, is the fact that like cannabis has to be over here in cannabis land. And we can't be in a wine bar, we can't be in any kind of bar, and that they're kind of like segregating the two markets. And one day people are going to be able to enjoy it, because like I don't like to drink alcohol either, but I want to go out with my friends to bars and clubs, and I'd like to be able to consume something, other than the vape pen, which I do. But yeah, so I really love the products out there. And again, the same thing with me. Like what I love, what keeps me in this industry are the cool people I get to meet, the relationships that we're able to form, and the experiences we get to have with those people is definitely the best part of being here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I got a question for you.
Yeah, please.
What's your favorite thing to smoke on lately?
Oh, favorite thing. I love flower. I love smoking joints. I like a good joint of Durban Poison first thing in the morning. Durban Poison is one of my all-time favorite strains. I love strong sativas. The sour Durban from Sense Farms is probably my favorite sativa right now. My favorite dab is Whitethorn Rose, live rosin. There's only a handful of companies that ever got the plant from anyone, so it's only like 5 extract companies I've seen have it, and I love all of them equally. Like if I see Whitethorn Rose, I will drive to that club and I will buy every single one that I have money for. In fact, there's a club in the city that I think they just got a new load. I'm going over there next Tuesday, and I'm going to buy whatever I can afford. Like I love the taste of Whitethorn Rose. And then edibles, like Uncle Arnie's. I love the beverages. I smoke flower every day, but I consume beverages to the point where like I'm buying cases all the time, kind of a thing. And I love it because I have a couple of friends, one in particular who drinks too much, and kind of slowly getting them to kind of migrate over to the cannabis beverages. And they just told me the other day that they haven't had a drink of alcohol in like 3 days. Yeah, yeah. And I'll finish it up, then I'll ask him as well. I love so many different types of cannabis. I love flower. I love edibles. Like I said, I love the beverages. Uncle Arnie's. I love dabbing Whitethorn Rose. I just love the plant. Like I love hanging out with farmers, and I have this new thing that I grew, and you're smoking it with them. Like I love that experience, that sharing. I love hanging out with bud tenders, hearing their opinions about things. Like as much as I love particular strains, I love just being in a community of cannabis lovers and watching other people tell me about their experience and what they love and what they're passionate about. I love that sharing kind of more than I love any one thing. I just love the group aspect of it. But what are some of your favorite strains and methods?
Yeah, I think like lately I've been on a pretty big flower kick. I'll either go like one or the other. I'll either be like dabbing a lot or smoking flower a lot. I think lately for flower, I've been smoking a lot of the Pink Zaza from Sog Army. I've been a big fan of that terp for actually like a year or two now. And then on the dabbing side, I've been on a real sort of like funky vibe. So it's been all like GMOs, like Hashburger, GMO, Government Oasis.
Yeah.
I think too, because like I just went through knee surgery. Like I just really need something that keeps me couch locked and like down under a little bit. So those have been like my go-tos lately.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's funny because it just comes up with when we're extracting and when I'm choosing what strains we're going to release. Like when it comes to dabbing, like I love the sweets. I love the papayas. I love just anything sweet. Like I love the sweet stuff. And I'm not as big of a fan as the gassy, funky dabs, like GMO and all that. But when it comes to flower, like I love the gassy flower and I don't love the sweet, fruity flowers. Like all the things I love to dab, I don't like in flower form and vice versa, which is very confusing to my farmer friends because they think, I got this for you. And it's like, I don't want papaya weed. I don't care. This is an ounce of it. They're like, I thought you love papaya. Like if I'm dabbing it, but like if I'm just I want some sour. You got some sour flower for me? So it's always very confusing for them. But I love the idea that the same thing based, whether it's flower or extraction, just gives me such a radically different experience that I kind of like only want one version of each thing. Yeah,
I'd say like shamelessly, I've been on a real candy kick for my flower. And then when it comes to dabbing, like I said, just funky gas, like that's what I want right now.
We got to get together and get us to change teams. And actually, I really want to smoke with your pops. That's definitely happened. You were sitting down with your dad. I got to consume with him. In fact, I'd love to have him on the show. I'd love to hear about his experience, especially being older and kind of coming into this later after having a full career somewhere else. And I'd love to hear about his experience with this.
Like I know it was the funniest thing because he used to coach our basketball team too, and like all the kids knew he was like a big smoker. And like the first time in college when one of my friends that he used to coach got to smoke with him, he tripped out. He was like, I can't believe I'm smoking with my basketball coach right now.
That's what I love about cannabis, just the community aspect of it, the family aspect of it, the bringing together of it. It's just a beautiful plant. I really appreciate you coming today. It was great talking to you. Me. It's funny, I've known you through equity trade a little bit, and it's just really great to get to be able to know people in this space and hear more about their stories. So thank you so much for sharing your story with me or sharing your story with everyone. And thank you for taking the time to do this. And it's been great.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Talk to you soon. Well, I guess we're going to smoke soon. All right, so that wraps up this episode of the Color and Cannabis podcast. So we're very excited to have Aiden Rafii here with us today. And we have some more great folks coming up soon. So appreciate everyone for watching or listening and like and subscribe and all the other stuff I'm supposed to say at the end of a podcast. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.